let's get away from people, but we'll talk more about the money. So what is income? If you want to turn to pages D, if you start at D, that's going to start the income section. What is income? Gross income is all income received in the form of money, goods, property, and services that is not tax exempt from tax. It includes income from sources outside the U.S. or from the sale of a primary residence, even if part or all of that income can be excluded. Gross income may include part of Social Security benefits received in certain scholarships and fellowship grants. So there's two different types. There's taxable and then there's non-taxable income. Income that is taxable must be reported on the taxpayer's return and is subject to tax. Income that is not taxable may have to be shown on the taxpayer's return but is exempt from tax. Can anybody think of an example of a taxable income? Does anybody know what a taxable income is? Hand?
Paychecks, wages.
Yep, paychecks, wages, a regular standard job. Can anybody think of a non-taxable income?
Retirement, like
Some retirements are. It just depends.
So I work on campus, and I think that's tax exempt in the state.
State tax? Well, we don't pay state tax here in the state of Texas, yes.
I don't know, my boss teaches me, but I still don't know.
Well, no worries. Let's go to the next slide. If you all turn to D3, it has all the taxable types of incomes that you would probably see at a tax site. And I'll just go over some of the highlight ones that we see very often. Wages, salaries, bonuses, W-2s is what we see pretty much every single day. Awards are a little bit less common. Business income and self-employment income, we'll get into the intricacies of that as we go further into the slides. Cash income, compensation for personal services, that's the same thing as self-employment. Cancellation of debt, disability benefits, dividends, stocks, bonds. I forgot to bring my government bonds. When I do this, I like to bring my government bonds to show you, but I'll bring them tomorrow so that you guys can see it, what a real government bond looks like. I have a couple of them at home. Employee awards, employee benefits or bonuses, gambling winnings. We are close to Oklahoma, so we do see a couple people who bring their gambling winnings. I had one lady last year, she said, oh yeah, I won a little bit. I see the form, 15,000. So people, they do come with those forms. It's very few in between, but we do live close to them and some people enjoy it. Interest income, IRA distributions, military pay, we don't see that too much, military pensions, non-employment compensations, pensions, we see those a lot, royalties, rewards, severance pay, Social Security benefits, and unemployment compensation are pretty much some of the standard forms that we'll see. We'll be going over some of the different forms that you'll see when you're at the site, so we'll also show you how to input them in the system. And then later today, we'll actually get into the system ourselves with all of you, and we'll have our trainers come around and help you guys and assist you, but we'll also input them into the system over the 2 days, okay? So we'll do some knowledge-based information, and then we'll do some practicum at the end of the day, of each day. So here's just a couple more child supports, EIP payments. These you probably won't see unless you do a past year's return. This was in the COVID relief packages. You wouldn't see those in this current year, but in the past years you would see those for all three of the stimulus checks that were related to it. Certain gifts of cash gifts can be included. Rental income is out of scope for us. Supplemental security income, workers' compensation, interest and bonds as well. So what is a W-2? This is what a W-2 looks like. It pretty much, a lot of organizations will submit a W-2 to us that they submit to the IRS, and then they're given one to report on their 1040. So this is what it looks like. It has a lot of information here, and we'll go over what's really important for us in pertains to tax preparation. See the employer identification here at the top? That's most important. 90% of rejects are from putting the wrong number here because it's a very long number. It's like 7, 6, and then followed by 8 different numbers. So we always check these numbers and make sure that they're okay. Employer information. And then on this side, it has the wages, withholdings, Social Security taxes, Social Security withholdings, and so on and so forth. And we'll go over each one of these line items and show you what it looks like. But this is what a W-2 is. This is what you do after you work a full year at an organization or even for a little bit. They'll submit this to the IRS, and then they'll submit one to you to do for your taxes. So how do we input that in the system? Our TaxSlayer software is pretty streamlined. It's actually very simple. So there's a couple ways that you can do this. Here at the top where it says the form finder, if you're ever lost within the system, if you just type in the form name there at the number 1, you see there, it'll show up on the drop-down menu. You can click on it and it'll take you straight to the form itself. The second way is actually within the federal section. This has all the different types of incomes. We'll go over it, but it's the top one. So as soon as you hit the federal income section, it's the very top one, Form W-2. And this is what the rest of the federal section looks like. So it has W-2, NEC, Schedule C, and we'll go over all of these and we'll speak about those in detail. Schedule K, Schedule E, Schedule D, Schedule F. A lot of different schedules, but as you can see, they have different sections for where you can input that information. So this is what the software looks like when you go to put in the W-2. Like I said earlier, you'll see the form, and then here's the information and where you'll put it in. So the employer identification is first. We always double, triple, quadruple check the EIN number because that's the most common mistake, is just putting in that number. It's not even anything else. It's just the employer identification most times. So we start by just assigning whose W-2 it is. So if it's only a single person in the household, it'll automatically assign the W-2 to the person. If they're married jointly, it'll ask you, whose W-2 is this, so that it knows who worked where. And on the right, it has the EIN, the employer identification number. These are just the basic information that we put in before we even get to the real numbers. So here is the second part of it where we actually input the wages, salaries, and everything else. So on the left, it has the wages, the Social Security, the Medicare wages, and everything on this side. And on the right side is the withholdings that we paid as well. So on the W-2 form, we'll input it as is shown. The software does a really good job of taking the wages and the federal withholdings, and it'll auto-populate all the rest of the information unless there's some Social Security tips that will throw it off. But most times, the security will have an accurate estimate for the information needed. It's a good practice to make sure because the system will automatically calculate it, but sometimes it'll be skewed. So you just make sure that, okay, I have these two numbers. It may be off, but I will just double check.
You might point out that wages sometimes can be different from Social Security wages.
Absolutely. And so all these boxes are all these boxes differ because they're based on a percentage. So they may differ between the wages and the Social Security wages and the Medicare wages depending on what happened on the W-2. So this just shows how much I got paid, how much I paid in taxes. Now we'll get into a little bit more detail.
Go back, John.
Oh.
Sometimes when you input the information in one, then it's going to put it for Social Security wages. It's going to put that same amount for Medicare wages. But sometimes those amounts are different depending on whether they were in a retirement plan or something like that. So you want to make sure that you look at those numbers carefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You always want to make sure that whatever the system automatically applies, it lines up with what is on the W-2 itself, and it will change depending on what happens on this next slide. So you'll have these numbers and you'll put those in. And so the first set of numbers were what happened, how much you paid, how much you were paid, and how much you paid to the government. Now this next section, boxes 12 and 14, are related to what else happened on the tax return. So it has, do you have third-party sick pay, retirement plans, anything like that? This is where that would go to. So this will break down what else happened. So if you did contributions to, pay for your Medicare or your employee benefits or your retirement plans, this is where that would go. So some less common incomes can be found in the less common income section. Those include gambling winnings, cancellation of debt, things of that nature, foreign earned income. The most common one that we see is the gambling winnings, other compensation, and cancellation of debt. And you'll be able to see these in the software when we get into it. Some other compensations, certain scholarships and grants are considered. And the rest of these we don't see fairly often. The household employee incomes, out of scope for us. Prisoner earned income, out of scope for us. And foreign earned income compensation. One thing we do see pretty often is interest and dividends. If you have a interest-bearing account on any of your savings accounts or bank accounts, it's not too uncommon that you'll receive this form at the end of the year. Or if you're active in trading stocks, bonds, anything of that nature, you'll receive an interest form or a dividend form. So these are represented like this in the software. We would just begin the interest form at the bottom. If you see there at the bottom, it has interest income or dividend income. So it has both forms within the same page for the purposes of the software. But this is what it would look like in your hands when you get one at a site location. So this is the 1099 INT, and this is sort of how it's broken down. Most forms are pretty parallel. I mean, they can be different organizations, but they'll use the same form, so they'll have the same breakdown for each form. And they change and differ a little bit, but this is the traditional form, or what this is most common that you'll see when you receive these forms. So how do we break that down? It's pretty simple in the software, actually. It just goes 1 through 12 all the way straight down. It just takes it all the way down. And so all you would do is just put the information in as you see it, just all the way straight down. So you'll have the form 1 through whatever, 12, and then you would just put it in as you see it on the software, as well as the demographic on the left, demographic information on the left. And so this is the secondary page of it. This is all one singular page. It brings it all the way down, and you just input it as you see it. And this is the 1099 DIV. It looks similar to the 1090 INT, but it's sort of different because this is dividends and that one was interest. So if you're a stock trader, this is one that you would receive, as well as another form that we'll go over as well. And it follows the same format. Pretty simple, very easy. And it does the same thing. In the software, it's the same way. We just put it in from top to bottom and the demographic information on the left. I won't ask this question because I didn't give you guys a 13614 today, but I'll bring one tomorrow because it talks about which parts of the 13614. But this is the intake sheet, and it's just getting you to see where that is on the form. I'll bring those for you guys tomorrow, and I'll post them in the chat tomorrow morning so that you guys can have them online.